Trucks.
Welcome to Euro Truck Simulator episode 16, side B.
Is that how we're doing this?
Potentially.
The exciting conclusion.
It's a two-parter, ladies and gentlemen, because we had so much to talk about, and we had a shoe to drop. So what exactly was it that I got wrong about Henry Darger?
Oh, okay, yeah. So to clarify, we're going to talk about less wrong and things like that, but I mentioned in the sort of null space between the previous episode and this one.
No,
that doesn't actually.
No,
oh my God!
That was not my fault.
Am I alive?
We're all good.
We're all good. Okay.
I think you forgot which side of the truck you're on, Josh.
Okay, so Transinet.
Where are we and what are we doing?
England.
We're in England. We're in Dover, where the White Cliffs are.
Taking
A
pressure tank
to Nuremberg, and you're okay.
And right now I'm just lingering in the middle of the intersection.
Hopefully there ain't nothing in there.
Okay, so I was sort of saying that, like, we talked, or I talked a lot about Henry Darger, mostly, and I never actually said, I said that there was one thing that Isaac got wrong, and that's, like, why I'm here with you today, but I didn't actually say what it was. It's not even, like, an important issue, like, I just made a big deal.
Spit it out, Rob.
The issue is, so one of the things that's famous about Henry Darger, Josh, I don't know if you know this, It's one of the first things anyone, like, hears about him, usually. We sort of didn't mention the one, so this is like a really weird, like, thing that you got at about how weird he was that, so I said that he drew a lot of naked children or painted them in his paintings, and these children, most of them, so there are little girls and little boys, but most of them look like little girls and were clearly traced from little girls and correspond to characters that are little girls in the story. And they, not always, but most of the time, have balls and penises.
Oh, good. Yeah, Isaac did mention that, actually.
Okay, yeah. Right, and so this is of course something that much ink has been spilled about, and it's one of the fascinations, and, you know, as I'm sure you can imagine. I think that the thing that I think Isaac got wrong was he said that
this was a indication that he had never seen a naked lady in real life,
right?
Which is a silly conclusion to draw.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things people conclude. It's kind of, you know, there's the famous story that people tell about, like, John Ruskin when he first, saw his wife, which is not true apparently. It's just apparently, like, totally false. And I don't know. I feel like that's one of these things that, like, people say because it's funny.
It's a canard,
and it's not. I'm always skeptical of whether it's really true. And it's just like, you know, I mean, so there are a number of things. Henry Darger was a recluse. He was a deeply religious recluse. You know, he probably didn't get out that much in, like, you know, ordinary social life. I mean, there are people who say, so the most recent biography's angle on him is that, you know, he was actually in a gay relationship for a large portion of his life and may have, like, sort of gone to gay bars and things like that. So he may have been active in social life. We don't really know. But there's an argument to be made that, like, he didn't know a lot of things that a lot of people know.
Okay.
But there are things like, so for instance, in the texts, there's a lot of, like, gender bending type stuff. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, there are cases where, like, characters, he'll just decide at some point, like, that one of the, like, boy characters who has been described as a boy for, like, thousands of pages and been going around having adventures with the girls is, like, actually a girl. And decided to act like a boy and dress up like a boy, and then, you know, this character just reveals, says, like, hey, I'm actually a girl, and, like, everyone was totally fooled, and they're, like, shocked. And there are, like, things like that. There's a lot of stuff like that, I think, in his writing, which kind of indicates that maybe the stuff about the genitals
is intentional.
It seems to be thematic. It certainly ties into things that were thematic.
It does make you wonder why it never goes the other way around, though.
Well, I think he wasn't... Okay, so if we want to get into this, I don't think, you know, if you're drawing this kind of cartoony art, are you gonna, like, draw a detailed vulva?
Are you gonna draw a detailed penis?
Are we gonna get into the... Speaking of, like, weird things that, like, our critics go on and on and on about.
I have no stake in this. I just don't see the reasoning that a vulva would be exactly the wrong thing to draw.
How did people come to the conclusion that he was in a gay relationship? Where did that come from?
So the thing is, this was the book that I bought, and the douchebag hipster trained employee helped me find, like a few months ago. I actually haven't read the whole book. I started when I heard that you guys wanted me to come on and talk about Henry Darger. I started reading this, and then I was, to be honest, that book is really not very good.
All right.
I was really the premise sounded fascinating, and I was looking into it as something that might be this might be a corrective to John McGregor says, and it's just kind of bad in a different way, to be honest. So I haven't been able to get through. I've only read half of that book.
That's an interesting little tidbit, because it seemed, the stuff that he's doing seems to be from a the idea of sublimated heterosexual desire, whether you're Freudian or not, seems to be pretty rampant.
Yeah, well, so the guy, the interesting thing is Jim Elledge, the guy who wrote this most recent biography. So he's a guy who is sort of a historian, I think, who studies gay men in sort of the first half of the 20th century. So of course, he kind of comes in with a perspective, and a lot of the things he says are along the lines of there's this long tradition of gay men representing themselves as female in art and that kind of thing, and according to him,
God, everybody just has their own fucking axe to grind when it comes to this.
Right. But it's he saw this stuff and said, "Oh, okay, this looks just like the stuff I look at in my day job, and which is kind of what John McGregor did and what basically all these people did. And I was hoping that would really, in this book, would just provide a really interesting perspective. This guy knows this stuff, I don't. I trust this guy's expertise more than John McGregor's Freudian stuff, but to be honest, the problem is a lot of his reasoning is just well, Henry Darger referred to this guy as his special friend, and you know what gay men said in the first half of the 20th century? It's all like that.
Right.
And it's sometimes people just say this guy is a special friend.
This is sort of what queer history has to be, is the problem.
Yeah.
As a general matter.
And but it runs into the problem that in a lot of ways, because all of these things are saying, well, this thing that Henry Darger did was very typical of what a lot of gay men did or something. And the problem with that is Henry Darger, most of the things Henry Darger did were not typical of anyone. And so if you look at one of the things he did and says, oh, well, this is typical of so-and-so, that might not have been why he was doing it. Because, everything he did, the more you look at it.
That's a form of reasoning that always bothers me everywhere it arises.
Okay. Yeah, I feel it's just, this is a case where it's especially problematic as far as I can tell.
All right.
But anyway, yeah, that's the Henry Darger penises deal.
Weirdo arts time, and we talked about the logistical difficulties of vulva drawing, and then we're going to move swiftly on from there. in an effort to potentially be less wrong.
That was smooth.
Thank you very much, sir. Actually, I don't know if we want to jump right into that again, because the other thing that
No!
Jesus Christ, what is wrong with you today?
I don't know. I've been drinking at the wheel, and I'm really disoriented by being on the wrong side of the truck.
I'm noticing this. When you start off in Britain, bad things happen. Like your life. Oh. He's Welsh. Anyway, so we, in preparation for this, we were going to do this episode 3 weeks ago, but then my life exploded. So we were going to talk about Southland Tales. Josh and I tried to watch Southland Tales in order to discuss it with you.
Oh, this is an amazing topic.
This is what always happens when I recommend things to you guys. It's apparently there's some sort of I don't know, explosion happens and then I hear about it.
The explosion was not actually related to Southland Tales in this.
Oh no! I was sort of meaning just you tried to watch it and you didn't make it through the whole thing.
Can we try and summarize what we remember about Southland Tales? I think this would be a fun exercise.
Okay.
I remember it opens with
this is a very good segue because if anything can make if any movie that had a widescreen release can make it play it being called outsider art, it's this movie.
I remember the opening is onto an interface called, I believe, the Doomsday Scenario.
Doomsday Scenario interface.
Okay, yes, the Doomsday Scenario interface, which is sponsored by Bud Light, and
that was added for the theatrical release after the disastrous Cannes Film Festival.
Oh, great. Okay, and then this.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And then this soldier who doesn't show up.
So, the first 10 minutes of exposition were added to make the film make more sense later.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
It really didn't help because
No, it did not.
What happened is like this soldier.
Although it would have been a better movie without it. So
The Cannes cut is actually much better in my opinion. Anyway,
this soldier who appears in this prologue, but doesn't appear to show up for the next hour or so of the movie, starts explaining the circumstances surrounding the Rock's character, whose name is anyone remember his name?
Boxer Santeros?
Boxer Santeros.
Boxer
yeah.
Santeros.
And he tells you about how he woke up.
It's ironic because he's actually a wrestler.
He woke up one day and in the desert and
Yeah.
couldn't remember anything, and it was unclear to me whether this happened after the events in the first act of the film, Act 3, or before. But I now know that the film opens with Act 3 because the first Act 4 actually, because the first three acts are comic books.
Yes.
Which surely nobody has ever read.
Someone on Slate read them and summarized them so you don't have to.
So, does this prologue act as a summary of the comic books?
No.
Oh my god! So all of this stuff he just breezes through.
Yeah. It's like Star Wars, except like if Star Wars didn't have the whole just like, Joseph Campbell thing.
Then like the fact that this boxer can't. What's happening to my truck right now?
You're forgetting that you're on this side of the cab again, dude.
The fact that this boxer has lost his memory seems to be completely unrelated to the storyline, which emerges about him writing a screenplay and a fake policeman impersonating his twin brother, a real policeman, and also trying to convince Boxer Santeros that he is racist.
Yes.
Yeah,
You're doing well. You're doing really well.
That he, the policeman, is racist,
Yes.
not that Boxer Santeros is racist.
Yes.
And they're doing this because they are a member of the underground, which appeared to be a bunch of like stereotypically unwashed hippies.
Freedom
Right.
fighters.
Well, the hippies
Freedom
have
fi-
kidnapped the twin brother and are making him do this.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I remember a magical line was, "You have to become the racist cop."
yes,
You need to become
the
a racist cop.
And this is in some way related to the. I mean, first of all, there's a totalitarian sort of corpo government that seems to run everything out of an Apple store,
Yep.
and then there's there's a wizard played by Wallace Shawn.
Oh my god. The Baron von Westphal.
Played again by Wallace Shawn.
Yeah.
Who
Apparently, the part
is-
was written for Wallace Shawn.
Oh, it was written.
I-
It was written for Wallace Shawn. Wallace Shawn read the script, had no idea what it was about.
but was flattered that
but
it
was
was
flattered
written
that
for
the part was written for. Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Just
And
absolutely
this movie has
fascinating.
everybody in it. It has Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yep.
It has The Rock. as we
Sarah
covered.
Michelle Gellar.
Yes, it has Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah.
It has what's her name? Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec.
It has Amy Poehler in it.
Yeah.
It has
it has-
Horatio Sanz
Yeah, and also the guy who spits lemons out of his mouth.
on Vine.
Yes. What's his name?
Yeah.
It has a whole bunch of
Like-
it has the sense of him, of like everybody passed on this.
Oh right, and Justin Timberlake.
And Justin Timberlake
Yeah.
doing a fine dramatic turn, actually,
Yeah,
doing a very good job
Yeah.
as the two cops.
Well,
We were discussing like which
No,
of these actors knew that they were in a comedy.
no,
Yeah.
Justin Timberlake isn't the two cops, actually. Justin Timberlake is the like Iraq war vet guy who sells the hallucinogen
Oh, shit.
alternative energy source invented by Wallace Shawn
That's Justin Timberlake.
to the other people. He's the guy who does the like lip sync.
Oh, he's the
Hallucinogenic.
sniper.
Yeah.
Okay, he's the
Yeah.
sniper.
Oh, wow.
I thought that he was the. For some
thought it
reason,
was
I thought he
Orson
was
Scott.
both cops.
No, the cops are like Sean William Scott. Is that right? I don't remember what else he was in.
But yeah, the question that we had as we started to watch this film was how many of these people know they're in a comedy? And there were a lot of comic actors, and there didn't seem to be any real relationship between whether the actor was a comedian by trade and whether they knew that they were in a comedy.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, my impression of it was. So this is and this gets into sort of why I like this movie. I mean, I don't. How should I put it?
You can't. There's no possible brief to be made that this movie is any good, but I
Yeah.
can understand liking it.
It's not good, but like I love it. I've seen it probably the most times I have seen any movie.
So if we were to
that
watch it with
breaks
you,
my mind.
Okay.
if we were to watch it with you, would you be able to explain like the intention behind every scene?
like
And the dramatic thrust?
no.
Okay.
That is not possible. I might be able to strive toward an approximation.
Because when I was a teenager, I prided myself on being able to do that with Donnie Darko, which is another movie which is kind of unclear.
The problem with Donnie Darko was that when he made the director's cut and did the voiceover commentary, we learned that Richard Kelly just kind of sucks.
No,
And
yeah,
all the things he intended
he
sucked.
ruined that movie
Yeah.
by making it more clear, but not really clear enough.
No, I remember listening to the director's cut commentary, which is him talking to Kevin Smith, also in Saffron Tails, by the way, playing this bearded man named Simon Theory. So anyway, so the director's cut commentary for Donnie Darko is Richard Kelly explaining what's going on all the time to Kevin Smith, and it's this whole dumb comic book universe powers, and there's a godlike artificial intelligence after the singularity that's controlling Donnie Darko.
What?
And Richard Kelly keeps referring to this as the Deus Ex Machina, and then patting himself on the back for knowing the term Deus Ex Machina.
Yes.
I sound like I'm being cruel here, but that's just literally
Here's the
what's
thing with me and Donnie Darko is I watched the original and I came to understand it pretty well, and I thought it was neat because it was a very adolescent movie, but I thought that this was intentional because to me the movie seemed to be a portrait of the delusions of grandeur that a teenager often has, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of left it an open question whether or not any of this was real science fiction stuff, although it gave you material to read that into it, or whether it was just Donnie Darko being a fucking weirdo freak kid.
Yeah.
But then the director's cut came out, and it basically confirmed beyond a doubt that there was this weird techno god, pulling all the strings, and that Donnie Darko was just some kind of superhero who we were meant to admire.
Right. So I mean, there's no question in my mind when watching. I mean, first of all, I never liked Donnie Darko because I didn't see the ambiguity there that you see in it. But there's no question in anybody's mind watching Southland Tails that this guy is permanently 14 years old.
Yes.
But he's bringing resources to bear that no 14-year-old would ever be able to access.
Exactly, and that's why it's so fascinating.
It is just sort of, I'm used to seeing, because I've lived on the internet for the last 10 years of my life, I'm used to seeing this kind of thing, but I've never seen anybody who could get so many people involved in his vision and to actually put it on stage.
Yeah, the fanfic, the crack fanfic gets made into a movie with real actors, special effects,
And, it is kind of fascinating because the magic words from this movie, it's you can almost... I can access them like get a remove. It's the way things, the famous last line of the movie. Can you
of Southland Tales?
Of Southland Tales.
He was a pimp, and
the
pimps don't commit
suicide.
Now, that is repeated again and again in the last half hour of the movie as kind of this significant mantra almost.
So is the intention there? This is my best guess, okay? Is the intention there that the language of this movie has been subsumed in this terrible consumerist future, and that this is reflected in the dramatic matter of the film that that we're watching is meant
absolutely
to be
not.
It's meant to be immersive.
No, it's supposed to be cool on its own merits.
So actually, I think it's so that. There is something kind of like that. I don't think it's quite like that. So, I think I'm pretty sure something that was intentional is that, and this is made more clear apparently if you read the comic books and stuff. So there's how much. So how much did you guys sort of? So you guys noticed that Boxer and Krista now mostly Boxer write the screenplay. I guess they co-write. I don't know. I think it's mostly Boxer. He's referred to more often as the author, but they write the screenplay. And there are little inset shots, they're very brief, where we see the screenplay. You can pause the movie and read it. And the screenplays, it sucks. And it's clearly meant to suck.
But
it's a screenplay that a bad
I think I did notice this when I was going through it on my own.
Yeah.
But it seemed kind of indistinguishable from the screenplay of the movie.
Yes, because that screenplay is prophetic. And this is a plot point, that the screenplay is prophetic.
So the intentionally bad screenplay is prophetic of our absolutely shit reality.
And so therefore the terrible writing from the screenplay takes on this metaphorical weight.
Yeah.
And because it is prophecy, and therefore thus allowing these terrible words to have a dramatic ring and weight to them that they otherwise would not be able to have.
Yeah, and it's really, if you watch the movie from this perspective, it's kind of, there's a lot there that is really kind of like, I don't know, I want to say it's like moving, but it's kind of, it's like, because I think The Rock does a really good performance.
He does. He's a better actor than anybody ever gives him credit for.
Yeah, no, and he does the great performance as this, like, kind of like, he's this very, like, swaggering action star, but he's in way over his head, and he suddenly turns into this neurotic guy with great hand gestures. And because the thing is, he's this guy who just wrote the script. Literally, the segments of the script that appear briefly on screen are things like
27% damage, dude.
They're describing his character as tall, dark, handsome, and like there's the woman who's in love with him. Describes him as a man who didn't play by the rules. Rules are for nerds.
See, the major problem with this movie, though, is that I can tell when it's trying to be satirical.
Okay.
And the bits of it that are trying to be satirical are not sufficiently distinguishable from the bits that aren't.
Oh no, that's the issue, because it's trying to do this whole meta thing of like, the bad screenplay is prophetic, so reality becomes a bad movie. But it's also just a bad movie, so...
Right, and it's like, I was unable to tell whether the misogyny was ironic or not.
Oh yeah, no, I don't even... But, yeah,
these issues are almost beside the point.
I want to explain what the misogyny looks like in this movie. It's like, you think about movie misogyny, right? This movie's on a whole other level. Like, this is like the first scene where the movie passes the Bechdel test is a bunch of porn stars on the beach talking on TV about what kind of penises they like, or where it is that they like to have sex, or something like that.
No, this scene is much more like bizarre and horrible than Josh
is making it.
It's like making it sound, and I wouldn't want to try to describe it, to be honest.
The point is that the movie is trying to be like this. I mean, it's cynical in the way that once again that a 14-year-old is cynical. It's trying to like. It's trying to underline the abasement of society by just wallowing in it as much as it possibly can, to an extent that is so cartoonish that it doesn't even succeed as satire because it is terrible in the wrong ways.
Yeah, no, I think that's entirely.
And I think the thing that I came away from the movie really appreciating is the unique poetics of the terrible language, and the unique poetics of the terrible framing, and the unique poetics of the terrible set design and special effects, because it has this incredible like sparkle. There is an aesthetic unity that carries those three things together, right?
Yeah.
It's like the way that the Zeppelin explodes is so like. That is like 15 years older than the movie. It would still be if the movie came out in the 80s, that would be unacceptable. It's so terrible. But there is this sort of thing like you're trapped. It's basically like you are trapped in an existential version of Duke Nukem or something. And in terms of providing a immersive and disorienting aesthetic experience that functions on all levels, it is successful.
None of this should be parsed as a recommendation.
Absolutely
all of
not.
This should be parsed as a recommendation.
But I couldn't make it through it.
Normally, I love stuff which is kind of broken in a fascinating way, but this the madcap I can't believe what I'm watching effect of this wears off after 20 minutes. It's just so saturated.
It's like the thing about it is that uniquely among experiences like that, it is gross. I mean, you have to hang out in the armpit of this adolescent.
Oh, totally.
And if you're not prepared to do that, and I don't think that anybody should be, then you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, so to me, I mean, I don't know if I can I don't know what I want to say. Not necessarily defend the fact that I've watched this movie like 8 or 10 times, but like
more power to you.
I know it's more like I kind of wish that I was able to disable my gag reflex long enough to
much like it's good that we have Henry Darger scholars. It's good that we have Richard Kelly scholars.
Yeah. So like this is what I'm here for, to just like talk about all this fucked up shit so you don't have to. So like. To me, a lot of what's fascinating about the movie has to do with like the actors who are in it. the people who made it, you don't see even the people who made the sets and everything.
Yeah.
Because it's clear that, like, you know, as you said, it's sort of a movie where this guy wrote this script that is, like, really juvenile, it's really out there. Not even, like, you say things are out there in the context of Hollywood, you have certain impressions. That isn't even this. This is, like, as you said, almost just... It's
actually, I do not understand how it got made.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And that's the response everyone
I
has
especially do not
You're
understand
about to
how...
miss your turn, dude.
It was... I'm sorry, what?
Dude.
Oh, fuck, I missed my turn. Excuse me.
That was cool.
What I especially don't understand is how it was nominated for the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is the highest honor that film festival can bestow upon a film.
Yeah, it had one of the most disastrous, like, receptions. It was booed horribly.
Yeah.
So, like, there's that. But, yeah, so
This is your solution?
Yes.
Whatever works.
We're gonna take the opposite exit.
But like,
Wait,
to me,
that's not
just,
gonna work.
It's a fucking 4-leaf clover, dude.
Shit.
And it's a divided highway. What are you even gonna do?
I'm gonna have to look. We'll figure this out, my friends.
Okay, I have faith.
Maybe I can use that thing up ahead.
It's possible. We're gonna be late.
You know what? I'm gonna just get my truck fixed.
Okay, that's a very smart move. That's a very
Okay.
smart move. He's
Okay.
getting towed.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Anyway, as you were saying.
Yeah, so I guess to me, like, you see all these actors in it, and it's clear that all of the actors are... Because there have been interviews where a lot of them have said, like, I don't understand that movie, but I was in it, and I think it's cool in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I think all of those actors are trying to figure out what to do with their material.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out which parts are satirical. They're trying to figure out, like, you know, is this all just, like, this absurd comedy? Like, if there's sort of a core of seriousness, what is it? Mm-hmm. How seriously should I take this character, who's clearly a cartoon character, but then, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what's really fascinating is it's an example of something where someone had this project that was just, like, far out and legitimately bad, and somehow he kind of roped a bunch of different people, not just actors, but
He must be a really
members and
charming human being. I mean...
Yeah, I suppose so. And it's like... It's fascinating. It's fascinating almost from, like, I don't know what to name this perspective, but the perspective of, like... It's kind of the same perspective as looking at Less Wrong and, like, all the people in there. That's kind of a disparate group in a lot of ways. And it's a group where a lot of people...
I would call it a sociological perspective.
Sociological, yeah, sure. But sort of smaller units than, like, giant demographics, like small communities. Because, you know, Less Wrong, you've got this guy at the center who's super charismatic and super weird and kind of sucks in a lot of ways. And you've got a lot of people who are very competent in a lot of things really gathering around him, and you've got interesting dynamics there. And in a similar way, like, Southland Tales got made.
From what I understand,
you know.
he was given that top billing at Cannes because of the strength of Donnie Darko, which sounds weird to say.
That does sound weird to say.
But
Yeah.
it was a cult hit, and it gave him kind of a good reputation among that sort of filmmaker.
But that can't be it. That can't just... I mean, you don't... Donnie Darko was not a movie that was such a masterpiece that you could, like, you know...
But that is what I read. It was the follow-up to Donnie Darko.
And thus
we're gonna see if it can earn the Palme d'Or. Like, this is kind of how that nomination
Will the
framework
master
works.
top himself?
Yes.
He's very... I mean, he must have such a good handshake. That's the only thing that I can,
Yeah.
that I can think of.
But so anyway, it's kind of like, it fascinates me from the perspective of, like, there's this guy, he's really weird, his work is not exactly good in the conventional sense, he's apparently really charismatic, and he gets all these people to do stuff for him, and you get these weird heterogeneous results that where clearly a lot of the people are figuring out how to spin this, like, from the perspective of coming in from, like, the normal world.
And from their personal...
artistic, you know, whatever. And that is just, I guess that's something that is interesting to me, is, like, watching people collide in this way and what results from it.
It wasn't Horatio Sands, it was the other dude. It was the guy from Mad TV.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Will Sasso.
Will Sasso.
That's the same Vine Lemon guy, too.
Yeah. Anyway, Horatio Sands is not in this movie. Hilarious though that would have been. God. It was also, like, you know, just sort of this hallucinatory parade of people from 90s television, which, you know, definitely
The future
impacted the weirdness of it for me.
is going to be even more futuristic than scientists had predicted.
Right. See, that's the kind of line that clearly was written to have been prophesized by the terrible screenplay, right? Because that was written as like a bad dialogue line. There's no other way to look at it.
As well as you
But
have to become a racist cop.
That one? Who knows?
It was delivered. It was delivered with such
Gravity.
beautiful gravity by Amy Poehler.
Yeah.
I mean, the future is going to be even more futuristic than scientists imagined. Line was also delivered with a kind of a beautiful icy gravity by the porn star actress.
Yeah, that character never became anything more than like a terrible portrayal of a bimbo or something.
Yeah, no, I don't really know what they were doing there. I don't know.
Although she does dance to Moby for a long time at the end of the movie.
God, I had like Matrix flashbacks, like the second Matrix movie. There's this thing, I don't know what it is with like terrible self-involved creators and where is he? Did you destroy him?
He's fine. He's gonna pay his toll and move on. Look, she's alive.
Okay,
Oh, great.
good. She doesn't even appear to be that alarmed.
I'm gonna back up so her AI will kind of take control of itself. And yeah.
There we go. Oh, God, this is a shit show.
This is really disorienting me.
I told
both
you.
the
I
fact
told
that
you.
I
You
both the fact
starting
that I
on the
have
wrong,
two people
wrong side
and
of
the
it.
fact that I'm on the wrong like this. I cannot feel right.
But
I
you're
feel like
but you're on the
all-
right side of the cab vis-a-vis us for the first time in ages.
That's true.
I'm actually sitting in the seat that I should be sitting in, and I
I'm
don't know where you
I'm
are.
sort of in the back.
Yeah, in the bed that
Whatever that is.
But regardless,
So yeah, I'm pretty angry at Richard Kelly. I'm pretty sure it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I'm looking. I'm glad that I watched it. It was enriching.
We should watch it.
Honestly.
For real. We should watch the whole thing.
Absolutely not.
No, watch the 3-hour Cannes cut. It's better.
Oh.
Good lord.
Oh.
It's longer?
It's longer. They added and like removed some stuff. It's complicated. The thing where like they cut off the businessman's hand for no good reason, and Wallace Shawn delivers the great line about like having it bronzed and mounted on a cheap wooden plaque. Like that part that comes like almost nearly at the beginning. It's like the second scene or something in the original cut. It's just really weird.
Da-da.
The beginning of that movie, I don't think I adequately expressed in my description of it earlier just how exhausting it is, like the cut we saw. Just this guy who isn't going to show up forever in the fucking narrative, talking and talking and talking, and like literally a line that he ends this with, and a line that appears a lot is, "This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. Not with a whimper, but with a bang."
What did you do?
I hit the truck. I'm about to run over the street divider. It's just all bad.
Okay.
All right. Cool. There are sirens. Your perspective is permanently slanty now for some reason.
Sorry, I'm projecting my disaster field.
No, this is all about Josh trying to drive British trucks.
Okay.
I can't even. It's actually kind of amazing to me just how much this is throwing off my equilibrium.
Oh well. So we've run through many of the subjects that we were hoping to get to in Part B here. I wanted to circle back around to Less Wrong, since we ended up circling back around to Less Wrong, and talk about the appeal of intentional communities. There's an intentional and conscious effort on the part of Less Wrong to replicate the structures of other social movements, particularly of religions.
Sure. Yeah.
In an effort to, I mean, and this is in the finest rationalist tradition, in an effort to take that which is useful about those structures and to make them less wrong. And to remove the catchphrases are hard to resist. To remove the bits about it which are based on non-rational beliefs. The problem with this, as I see it, is that you can't really remove irrationality from these structures.
Right.
And
But you can make them less wrong.
but can you though on a fundamental
It does
level?
kind of seem to me like they are fundamentally something wrong.
The issue with this is that I think is the larger issue with rational actor theory as a general matter, and trying to project sort of economic modeling on human behavior, is this idea that there are certain needs that have to be satisfied, but these needs can be divorced from other concerns. That these needs are sort of monads, and if you go through the right gestures and if you have the right experiences, then they can be sort of sutured onto any ideology that you want to suture them onto, without there being any friction.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, and it's like I believe to a certain extent that people in community behave a certain way no matter what the focus of the community is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's absolutely like an inherent human desire to be in community, but I also think that you need to be kind of hit on the head in order to really do it, if you know what I mean. There's a certain suspension of actual inquiry that you need to have in order to be in any kind of community.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. Sorry, go.
No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, because one of the things that really fascinates me about it, this is what I was kind of hoping to get around to last time, and then we parked successfully, was that, like...
Well, that won't happen this time.
Alright, okay. Well, one of the reasons that I'm so fascinated about it is it's made me think about this kind of border between, like, things that are religions and things that are just kind of groups that maybe they believe in something, and it's, you know, it's not a supernatural belief and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I keep thinking about is that, so we haven't really been able to get into this. I could provide some links and stuff. But basically, you know, Eliezer Yudkowsky, who is this central figure, is really, really weird.
Okay.
Like, and I think at least I know Isaac knows this from reading like the stuff that I have said about him. It made Josh.
I got a sense of weirdness pretty much just from looking at the index page.
Right, but it goes so far, and
Okay.
I mean, and a lot of it is like things about like the stuff I talk about with the apocalyptic AI and stuff. Like there are a lot of beliefs that he has like that are they're far removed from reality, not in sort of the pejorative sense of like being not true, but in the sense of they're built on towers upon towers of assumptions that just seem to go like, you know, until the guy's talking to himself about, you know, future robots communicating in like time loops to like and stuff like that.
And this is the guy a bunch of people trust to teach them about rationality.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this is what I'm getting at, is that, to be honest, like, would I have read some of the good things I've read from these people? Would I know what motivated cognition is, for instance, if these were just, like, sober people who wrote a fun, like, academic blog about rationality? If there wasn't this fascination point, which I sort of talk about as though it's a negative fascination point, I think this guy is so weird, and I'm sort of gawking at him from a position of superiority. You know, if I didn't have that angle, if this was just like a kind of cool but vaguely boring blog about being biased, I wouldn't be as fascinated with it. I wouldn't read as much of this stuff. And I wonder if that isn't just sort of like the dark mirror image of all of the people who go to these meetup groups and are super involved in this. I mean, I think in a way, they need to have this super weird guy.
Well, so
you know.
I mean, when you hear people talk about getting into Less Wrong, the people who are really into Less Wrong, all of these are they're definitely conversion narratives. I mean,
Right,
they're
exactly.
definitely like, you know, I was lost, I was, you know, having a hard time in my life, and then I started reading this, and it made sense to me in a way that nothing has ever made sense to me before.
Yeah, no,
And-
they're very much like that.
Yeah, and like, you know, all of a sudden I realized what had been missing all this time, and like,
This all sounds deeply not what it claims to be.
well, I mean, this is the thing, right? It's like, there has the basic currency of human behavior is motivation, and as far as I am concerned, motivation cannot be drawn from pure reason. That this is just me. This is but I think that if you there's this it's like if you grind a human being down at a paste and sort through it, you're not going to find a soul. And if you grind the human condition down into its most logical components, you're not going to find a reason to do anything.
Yeah, ultimately that account is going to be really boring, and somehow there are things in life that aren't boring. So
exactly. So there are intangibles, you might say, as if we're talking about this in terms of economics. There are intangible motivators and intangible sources of fascination, and so what Yudkowsky is doing is he is taking these principles and putting the breadth of magic into them.
Right.
And
yeah.
the thing about magic that is significant is that it is, you have to have an element which is fundamentally untouchable, like and in a lot of there's in religious traditions there is the mystery, there's the Holy Spirit, there's the sort of like in Buddhism or Zen there's enlightenment, there's the sort of thing that cannot be said but must be experienced and must be like and there's mystery plays, and there's all these traditions of these untranslatable things. And what I see happening with the less wrong folk is that in place of this there is the appeal to a mythical smarter person.
Right.
We even saw it in that little excerpt that we saw there. There's like, there's somebody out there who understands this more than I do.
Right.
There's somebody out there who understands everything.
Oh yeah.
And the way that he says at the beginning, like, maybe somebody who understands this can talk about it, is sort of like
it's almost like a prayer.
I abase myself before before this particular I make myself humble, and now I will offer my humble addition to this canon of thought.
Whereas that article struck me really as the opposite of communication. Like, I doubt that anybody's actually going to read that and say, "Oh, I understand this much better than this person," and actually be right. Like, it struck me as this person just building a mental pit for himself to occupy, so that he doesn't have to actually think about the question number one, which was, should I take this job?
God.
It seemed like a way to remove himself from the consequences. That's a word that he stops using, consequences.
Yeah. Well, I think the preconceptions of a lot of this kind of thought is that what we would think of as immersing yourself in the immediate question that's presented to you is just kind of stopping the buck too early, is kind of putting this very blinkered horizon on which consequences you're interested in. And that if you can, you should broaden that horizon as much as you can and think about all this weird stuff,
Absolutely, and that makes sense. But I mean, and the thing about it is that there's the idea that if you broaden your horizon enough, you will start eventually like the biggest and the most important ideas and motivators will come through if you're able to have a broad enough horizon and a complete enough understanding. And then what came through was the robot apocalypse.
Right, yeah.
And which demonstrates that what you're actually going to do if you cast your net wide enough is that you're going to be drawn to whatever gives you a boner.
Or you're going to...
Intellectually speaking, sorry, what?
Or you're going to arrive at, just questions which are insoluble.
They're the ones that you're going to want to keep chewing on.
It goes from, should I take a job as a desk clerk, to, if I took a job as a desk clerk, what effect would that have on global agriculture? To, what effect does global agriculture really have on the shape of the universe?
It's a sphere.
Yeah.
It just becomes why do anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is all very true. I think it's very true. As you said, Isaac, that these people have this kind of fetishization of intelligence and understanding as very concrete existing things. There's a lot of analogies between those and kind of physical power or
Right.
levels in video games, or all these kind of very concrete, like, oh, you're at level 5, you can blow up a level 2 person kind of stuff. And intelligence is talked about in kind of facetiously in those kind of terms, but it's one of those things where if someone does something facetiously incessantly,
Yeah.
there's kind of something to it. And,
There's definitely this thing that I noticed among like the writing of the people in here who I like the best, where it's like, you know, the thing that you look for, or the thing that I look for to try to determine whether somebody is scary or not, is the presence of irony, and irony is present, and
Right.
what that demonstrates to me is that I am wrong about the presence of irony determining whether something is scary or not.
Oh yeah, no, that's the thing.
And I should absolutely have known that, because I've known very few people as sarcastic and like sort of heavy-lidded eye-rolling about the universe as my scary fucking Catholic aunt, and like, and it's like, so that's my bias that I'm running into right
Yeah,
now.
no, well, that's very interesting.
But the point that I was trying to make there is that irony is absolutely present. It's like they're aware, you know, of, they can be funny,
Right.
and they're aware of how silly some of this is.
Right, yeah.
But that doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure.
On a slightly related note, my kind of reaction to it is that it seems like these people try to present themselves as having a monopoly on the action of confronting one's biases, whereas I think that's actually very ordinary human behavior, if you see what I mean. It requires some prompting sometimes, but it seems like the way these people kind of get people, if you see what I mean, is to present themselves as being the only community that knows how to do this.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think that there's something to be said for the idea that they are the only community that I know of that is kind of built around this and really tries to get people. Like, you know, so there are things that effectively they're not couched in, like, heuristics and biases terms, but, you know, there are, I mean, every tradition there are things that try to get people to look at their biases. I think Less Wrong probably is unique, maybe not for good, in kind of trying to take this all the way and, like, say, okay, we take this 100% seriously, we want to overcome these as much as we can, we want to be as little wrong as we can, and not just kind of codify little, you know, behavioral rules you can fit on a fortune cookie about it.
Right.
But live the lifestyle, you know, which may not even be a good thing, but...
Nor it appears to be something that these folks actually do.
Right, but they're very serious explicitly about living the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. It's like... I mean, it makes sense to me, because I think particularly if you got the kind of brain that likes to jump to conclusions, and likes to define rules and ways of thinking about the world, it's and is hot on pattern recognition, which I think is, broadly speaking, something that all of these people are, and that I am. You absolutely have to have that, because you are prey to making vast mistakes.
Yeah.
If the higher the scale of your thinking and abstraction is, the higher your ability to just completely forget about what's in front of you and walk into an open manhole cover.
Right. Yeah.
Or to, God, your employer is going to be... Jeez, you just really kissed him, didn't you? You better back up a little bit so that his AI knows.
He figured it out.
Okay, that's good. Oh, God, what a shit show. So it's like, you know, the sort of the history of my early adult life, my 20s, is all about, like, trying to root out these things that I keep doing, like, that are the equivalent of putting my hand on a stove over and over again, because I'm able to rationalize that it wasn't actually the putting the hand on the stove that was the problem. It was some other, you know, surrounding circumstance that resulted in my getting burned.
Right.
And so I value that, but the problem is that it feels like you're trying to solve the problem by doing more of the thing that's actually at the root of it, and that is like this massive pile of abstractions.
Exactly.
Which, you know,
Yeah, you may need to blinker the horizon even more so that you're starting to notice. Yeah, well, I'm getting immediate feedback from my hand. It's really bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like sometimes it's as Josh was saying. Sometimes it's not the effect on global agriculture that's important. It's the effect of the stove on your hand.
Yeah.
But I don't like. None of this is meant to be some castigation. It is kind of like a little bit of finger pointing and laughing, I admit, but
I'm castigating.
Okay, Josh is castigating. I'm shrugging.
Okay. I mean, there's a whole world of entertaining castigation you can do here, and I highly recommend it. So
but it's more a matter of like I feel like it is such an instructional case in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And that but it's a reminder that we all do need community, and that there is a part of us that also that needs a locus of belief,
right,
in one way or another, and it's just a matter of being responsible with where you put it.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's kind of the thing, because to be honest, I mean, there are a lot of loci of belief that don't really appeal to me, and a lot of the stuff in the less wrong one, like, I don't want to say, oh, it's so rational, and I want to be rational, blah blah blah, I want to be perfect. It's more like some of the stuff these people say, how should I put it? It seems less wrong to me. It seems like I read some of the stuff these people... It's great to get the title drop in there. It feels good. A lot of these stuff these people say, when you sort of... There are so many bad things you can point to, especially in some of the weird Yudkowsky essays, but there are so many of these things where you read stuff by these people, and they'll just say all of these things like, well, I don't understand this very well, but here's what I know, and, here, like, things like, well, this is my bias, and I know this, and you should keep that in mind, or, here, or even just, so, for instance, there's a blog, so this is a whole other tangent, there's this blog done by a guy from Less Wrong, who I kind of like, a blog called Slate Star Codex, which I know we have had, like, arguments about, so that's a whole tangent that I want to kind of...
I have a bizarre personal connection to the guy who writes this.
Right. I mean, I sort of have a bizarre personal connection. There are endless, like, worlds that we shouldn't really not get into here. Absolutely. So, like, but what I wanted to say about that is there are some weird things about that blog. There are some things I don't like. There are a lot of things I don't like about that blog. But one of the things I like about that blog is that's a guy who, in kind of the less wrong vein, basically he looks at a lot of things, and he says, okay, I want to understand this, and I want to know, like, what academia has to say about it. And he goes and he finds a lot of papers, a lot of, like, sociology and medical studies and things like that, and he reads them. And when he talks about something on his blog, it's very much, it's not like he's hawking... I mean, sometimes it's like he's hawking one particular perspective. But often it's just like, hey guys, I got interested in this, and now I'm going to do, like, a very, like, funny but apparently informed lit review. Like, amateur lit review, admittedly amateur lit review. And it's just like he does it, and that's, like, this guy's blog. Mm-hmm. And, you can get those kind of things here and there. You go on the blog of a particular type of academic, and you see one of these things.
This is not dissimilar to what you do, actually.
I mean, I think he does it at about, like, 10 to the 3rd times, 10 to the 5th times as much, like, curiosity and, like, raw, reading speed and stuff as I do, but thank you. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, I read that stuff and it's just, like, a lot of stuff where I'm like, wow, this is, like, the kind of thing that I would try to do if I was interested in something, except I would read, like, 2 or 3 papers, get kind of bored halfway through, skim the second half, and then I would, like, cobble them together half-consciously into an opinion that I would then go around after a few drinks, describing to people as though I'm really smart. And here's this guy who, like, does that, but the better version, the version you should be doing. And I'm like, wow, this is great, and this...
Absolutely. And it's like, you gotta... the only thing is you gotta resist the urge to conflate that particular skill set with being more likely to be correct.
Sure. And he's got his problems, certainly, and, you've got to keep that in mind when reading his stuff, I think.
Mm-hmm. But it absolutely doesn't detract from the appeal of that kind of skill set and the utility of being able to be educated like that by somebody. I mean, that's what academia is for, by somebody who collates text and digests it and presents it to you.
Right.
That's why we read journals. I mean, and it helps that the dude has a sense of humor.
Right. Yeah. And so that's one of those things where, like, to the extent that stuff like that, the thing that I just described, is kind of, like, supposed to be the core of kind of the less wrong ethos, that's one of the first times that I've like seen a really explicit, like, earnest capital C community built around something that I was like, wow, this is great. You know, I mean, that sounds weird because there are tons of capital C communities built around things that are like great and I approve of, but are things that I don't really see myself as aspiring to.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, you know, I feel like I'm better at kind of doing the academic thing, say, than being persuasive. So I feel like I would never be able to be a guy who goes around and say, you know, persuades people to have different opinions on political issues because I'm bad at that.
So I have to ask, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
You more or less just said that Less Wrong struck you as impressive because it was a community built around kind of an academic pursuit. Is that right?
To some extent, an academic pursuit and sort of...
What the fuck are you even doing?
Breaking.
Oh, that was... Okay. Cool.
Oh god, your employer is going to be so
So, like,
pissed.
where are we in the overall progress of this mission?
We are almost done.
Okay.
We're like 4 minutes
Okay,
away from being
cool.
done in game time. So we're like,
You were saying.
Yeah, I mean, so it's an academic pursuit, and it's the kind... how should I put this? And this is something that's happened to me with other people, too. I could talk about those people. But, it's the kind of... It's notable for being the kind of thing that I try to do, and I enjoy doing, and also think is good.
Yeah.
But done very well.
What I'm looking for is, like, what distinguishes it from academia in this sense?
Academia, in a lot of ways, is frustrating and disappointing. On a kind of personal level, I mean, there are lots of really smart people. There's also a lot of aspects where it's kind of conducted in... I think everyone who's been in academia for enough time will just say that it's conducted in not really a spirit of free inquiry. There's a lot of sort of partisanship on little academic issues that are not even really known outside, but people kind of, you know...
So Less Wrong is kind of like a utopian freewheeling academia.
well,
That's
it's mostly young. You know, these things are... The seeds of these things are already present and will be more present.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
But, you know, it's also a stylistic issue.
Oh, sure.
I mean, there's a way of writing which you find more appealing than the like standard academic writing, because standard academic writing is fucking terrible.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's really bad. I mean, just straight up bad. A lot of it.
Yeah.
Even in science, we think of that as being a problem in the humanities. It's also a problem in science. A lot of scientific papers are just terribly
I've
written.
noticed this.
Yeah. No. Okay.
And so it's like there are ways in which this is an improvement over academia, and like the gate, and as in anything where the gatekeeping is different, the editing is different. There's also like plenty of places where absolute bullshit is unquestioned, and which is true in academia as well. But anyway, if I were to sum up the why this question in a sort of Saffron Tails-esque way, it would be
This is the way the world is.
I was going to say you can't help what gives you a boner.
That is a very Southland Tails.
I think it's like it's important to acknowledge that and to be like, well, this is the deal, but to be responsible with your intellectual boner. That's my
No, that
is my takeaway from these sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, we've arrived.
Okay.
We've got the tanks. You only destroyed your truck basically twice. And repaired it and then broke it again, and you're not even close to the parking space. What are you even doing?
I'm giving myself a lot of room
Okay, fair enough.
to wiggle around in. Wiggle room, you could say.
Oh.
Here we go.
Yeah. Well, no, that was good because we actually kind of came to a conclusion. Natural.
Yeah, this
conclusion.
is the point in the game where I would generally read a poem, but instead I'm going to read a random.
I do have a
thing.
new book of Dorothy's poems, but yes,
I'm going to read a random thing from Less Wrong.
That does sound
Okay.
like a better idea.
Just gonna bring that up, and by the time that I bring it up, you'll probably be done.
My problem is that I always oversteer you guys. Do you have any insight on parking trucks, Rob?
Oh, none at all.
Okay.
You should look up one called Joy in the Merely Real.
Okay, sounds good.
I don't know why that came out. It's one of the more famous Sinkowski ones, and it's relatively non-jargony and sort of it's just about life and stuff.
Okay, fair enough. Jeez, okay, this is poetic. Oh, because it's a Keats quotation.
Keats Riankowski. the game.
You've got to admire that phrase, dull catalog of common things. What is it exactly that goes in this catalog, besides rainbows, that is? Why, things that are mundane, of course. Things that are normal. Things that are unmagical. Hey, this is relevant. Things that are known or knowable. Things that play by the rules, or that play by any rules, which makes them boring. Things that are part of the ordinary universe. Things that are, in a word, real. And that's what I call setting yourself up for a fail. At that rate, sooner or later you're going to be disappointed in everything. Either it will turn out not to exist, or even worse, it will turn out to be real. God, this is so self-aware, but not quite self-aware enough. If we cannot take joy in things that are really real, our lives will always be empty. For what sin are rainbows demoted to the dull catalog of common things? For the sin of having a scientific explanation. We know her woof, her texture, says Keats.
What?
An interesting use of the word, as in warp and weft.
Okay.
Interesting use of the word we, because I suspect that Keats didn't know the explanation himself. I suspect that just being told that someone else knew was too much for him to take. I suspect that just the notion of rainbows being scientifically explicable in principle would have been too much to take. And if Keats didn't think like that, well, I know plenty of people who do. I've already remarked that nothing is inherently mysterious. Nothing that actually exists, that is. Reasonable! Yes!
It's the exact perfect word.
Really, what more can you hope for?
Anyway, your choice. I just want to do the button here.
Yeah.
Your choice is either decide that things are allowed to be unmagical, knowable, scientifically explicable in a world real and yet still worth caring about, or go about the rest of your life suffering from existential ennui that is unresolvable. This is so exactly what we were talking about.
Yep.
But the thing is that you can't actually escape from magical thinking. It's endemic to the human experience. All right.
Wow, that's good. Great.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Yep. That's the moral for today.